Okay, so you should have watched tutorial number 1 by now, or at least be familiar with setting up a folder on your hard drive called Image Library, which will be used for importing your images into using Lightroom. So at this point, I'm going to open up Lightroom, go back to my design tools, and open up Lightroom 4. And when you first open Lightroom, this is the first dialog you're going to be presented with. And basically the way Lightroom works is Lightroom has to have a catalog to work with. And what this is really asking you is, I need a catalog to work with. So do you want me to set up a default one, or do you want to choose a different catalog, or do you want to set up a new one? So the first thing you need to do is you need to set up a catalog. I would recommend against using the default catalog. You'll see as I choose a different catalog that it gives me an opportunity to specify where the catalog is going to be. The default will place it in a specific place. By choosing a different catalog, it gives you an opportunity to create a new catalog and then also to choose where this catalog is going to be. So I'm going to choose new catalog, create a new one. I'll scroll down here to my hard drive, and what I like to do is I like to create a folder at the same level, this is the root level as the external hard drive, create a folder that is just going to hold my Lightroom catalog. So it's going to be separate from my image library, but it's going to be its own folder, and I'll know that this folder is going to have the Lightroom catalog. So I'll choose new folder. I'll say LR for catalog, Lightroom catalog, and I'll choose create. So now it's created this folder called Lightroom catalog, and now I have to give the catalog itself a name. So I'm going to call this imaging1 -LR cat, and this will tell me, I'll know that this is a Lightroom catalog pertaining to this course, Imaging 1. So I'll create the catalog, and Lightroom will continue to open. Now the next time you open up Lightroom, it will know that this is the catalog you want to use. Now you'll get these little tips: import button, choose import button. This is great if you need some help and to understand what's going on. I'm going to dismiss this. Simply click the close button here. And now I'm presented with, I'll just move this one over a little bit, make this a little bit smaller. And now we're in the library module. Lightroom has these different modules across here at the top. There's library, develop, map. The only thing we're concerned with right now is the library. The library is where you are going to be able to preview your images after they have been imported into the catalog. The thing to remember about Lightroom is that it's not ever doing anything to your files. It's going to import them, it's going to place them in a place that you specify, and then when you work with Lightroom, it's never going to actually work with the actual files. It's going to be working with what are referred to as proxies, or basically kind of previews of the way in which Lightroom is going to interact with these files, but it never actually touches what we refer to as the source files. Okay, so this is the library, and there's nothing in the catalog. I can't see anything in this window at all, so I have not imported any pictures. So the first thing to do is to click the import button. This is going to bring up this new window, and it's a little confusing at times. If your window doesn't look like this, but if it looks like this, where it's really much smaller, you need to click the expand button. So click this button and it's going to expand up. Now, several things you're going to notice here. Going from left to right, if you look at the top menu bar up here, this is important to understand what Lightroom is doing. It's taking your photos from somewhere. You're going to specify where. It's going to do something to them here in the middle, and then it's going to put them somewhere. So the way this is set up right now, on the left hand side, these are all my hard drives. I could import photos from different hard drives if I chose to, or in this case my Nikon D800. This is a memory card that I have plugged into my computer, so it's available. And if I highlight this, you'll see there's another folder inside there, and inside that folder is basically, these are the previews here in the center of what is on the memory card. Okay, so this is where I want to come from. There's also this is the same thing up here. And so I'm going to bring them from the card. I'm going to do something. In this case, I want to copy the images from the card, and I want to put them somewhere. Now, the default right now is set up as users, my name, and then it's going to put it into pictures. If I click on this title up here, the drop down shows me, well, I could import them directly to the desktop. I could put them in the pictures folder. Whether it's Mac or Windows, is going to have a pictures folder. I could put it in the movies folder. I could choose another destination, or it's going to go into pictures. Now, if you remember from the first tutorial, I suggested that the place to put them is in the image library. So I don't want it on the desktop. That's like throwing my pictures into the room with no organization. Same thing with the pictures. I want to choose other destinations. So I'm going to click on this, and I'll scroll down to my hard drive, which is right here. This is the one that we've been working with. And I'm going to choose image library. And this is where I want it to place the pictures. I'll move this out of the way a little bit so you can see more. My image library is where I want my pictures to go. Now, if you do this every single time with Lightroom, you'll know exactly where your pictures are going to end up. So I'm going to choose this folder, image library, as the place where my pictures are going to go. And you can see up here now it has changed. Hard drive, image library. I'm going to know where that's going to go. Okay, I'm going to twirl this up a little bit here so you can see. This can simplify things a lot. Now, the first thing I want to do is, well, before I talk about that, let me talk a little bit about the middle window here. Every preview that's here, and you can see these are bracketed exposures, so I have a underexposed, normal, and then overexposed image for these sets of images. If I scroll down, I can see everything that's here. On the card, I have 58 photos. I could choose only the new photos. So, for example, if I go out and I photograph some images on a card, and I don't reformat the card, and I take some more pictures, and I come back, the same images that I took before will still be on the card, but I don't want to re-import them a second time. So in that case, I would choose only the new photos. Well, these are new, so there's no distinguishing. Lightroom will remember the images that's already imported. So in this case, I'm just going to choose all photos. You'll notice also beside each one of these thumbnails, there's a checkbox. And the checkbox is going to tell you which one of these images is going to be imported into my image library. Now, the good thing about this is that if I have some duds, say something that I know already is out of focus, or maybe there was nothing recorded or whatever, I can choose to turn off one of these, and you can see it gets grayed out, and that means it will not be copied off of the card. So that's what that checkbox will do for us. Okay. Also notice down here in this preview window, I can change the size of the thumbnail, so I can see it's a smaller view. If I scroll down, you can see there's more that I can see just simply by changing this slider. I can make them bigger, I can make them smaller. Okay, and this is the grid view right here. If I chose to pick only one of these images and highlight them, you can see the border gets lighter. If I click on this icon here, it should only show me that one, and that's exactly what it's doing. If I choose my arrow keys, I can scroll through the various images. Now this is a bit slow, and the reason why it's slow is because it's trying to pull the data directly off of the memory card. It hasn't pulled it onto the hard drive yet, and memory cards are not really that fast. So that's why there's a bit of a delay. I'll go back to the grid view here. Okay, so I have my photos. These are the ones I want to import. Now, these different menu items here on the right-hand side give me some options as far as what do I want to do to the files when they come in. So let's take a look at the first one, file handling. Now, don't worry so much about this. render previews. That's a little more advanced. One of the important things though is don't import suspected duplicates. So the suspected duplicates is based upon the file name, which you'll see right here. This is the file name, which is basically embedded with the image right in the camera. So the camera is doing this right here automatically. And I want to make sure this is always checked off so that I'm not importing things several times. I'm going to end up with multiple copies of the same picture. If you have, say, a third hard drive and you want to immediately back up your pictures to yet another hard drive, this is a very useful checkbox right here, make a second copy, which means that when the images are imported off of your card, it's going to automatically bring them to a second copy, which can be pretty useful because you can actually immediately have a backup. You know, it's going to import these images to 2 different locations and you'll immediately have a backup. If you don't have a lot of hard drive space, or if you don't have a third hard drive, this probably is not a good idea. So I'll turn that one up. File renaming. I don't want to rename files right now. I could do it on ingestion this is the ingestion part. This is when we bring in images off of the card into the computer. I don't really want to rename files right now, and the reason why is because it's really easy to rename files later on. In terms of some of your classes, some of the other courses, I know that for example, Peter wants files renamed a certain way. You can do that later. You don't have to worry about it right now. Apply during import. If you have particular settings, say you like a particular look, this is very customizable. You can actually choose different filters if you want to have an infrared kind of look. Again, we can all do that later on, so I really wouldn't consider doing that right now. Again, same thing with metadata. I'll talk about metadata in another tutorial. Keywords, you could apply all the keywords, when you bring them in. Later on, for example, if say you're doing weddings, and you want to tag these images right away, you'll know exactly what the wedding is, and assuming everything on the card is from the same thing, then you might want to add keywords at that point in time. But sometimes, you might have a whole bunch of different stuff on the same card, and so if you apply the keyword here, it's going to apply it to everything that comes in. And so, yeah, sometimes that's not necessarily a great idea. One of the things I will do, however, and you'll notice this, for example, I'll cover this in another tutorial. I can set this up where when I bring it in, I apply a copyright notice immediately to the images. So as soon as they're copied, then the copyright notice is applied. But that's, for right now, that's a little advanced, but just to kind of give you a heads up that there's things you can do like that. And I do like to do that when I'm working on my own work. I have set up these copyright notices. I click on that. I know that these were all shot at 2013. So when I bring it in, I'm going to apply that as my copyright notice. I'm going to leave it for now. Twirl that one up. And then the destination, of course, this is going to give you a preview of where. I know this looks really confusing right now, and you can see part of the problem, of course, is I have all these hard drives, which I'm sure makes it confusing for you. So I'm going to twirl this stuff up. Hopefully, I guess not. Okay, so I'll scroll down here to my hard drive, my external hard drive right now. Here's my image library. This is where I want it to go, and this little arrow right here highlighted is showing me where it's going to go on the external hard drive, and I put the folder in there saying image library, and these little folders, Lightroom will automatically create this folder inside the image library when I import these files. It's going to create a new folder. It's going to call it 2013, and then it's going to give it a date. Now you may ask the question, well, how does it know how to do that? Well, this is how it does that. Organize by date. So it's going to organize, it's going to create a new folder by date, and here is the date format. It's going to create a new folder, 2013, and then it's going to put it into this folder by date. Now, if you choose to, you can obviously format this differently if you want to. This is the way I work. I would invite you to basically play around with this stuff and see, where the stuff goes. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. Okay, so I've set this up, and this is where it's going to go. I'm going to copy these files. These are Nikon electronic files. These are basically the Nikon RAW files. Even though I've highlighted this one, all these all the ones that have the checks in them, the check is checked off, these will all be imported. So I'll just click import, and up here on the top left hand side here is what's called the progress bar, and this will show you what's happening when this moves all the way over to this side. Then the process will be completed. So right now it's importing the files. These are rather large files, so it takes a little bit of time for the import process to happen. So right now what's happening is that the images are coming off of the card. They are going through Lightroom. Lightroom is keeping track of where they're going, and they are going to where we told it to import them to. And again, as you can see, this is taking a bit of time because off of my Nikon D800, these are very, very large files, so it takes time for this to happen. Okay, so I fast forwarded here. It takes a bit of time to import all these images. You can see again on the progress bar up here, we're almost at the end of this import process. And the thumbnails are coming in. We're seeing the library view now. So as they're imported, the library view updates. And you can see here now it's completed this, and this progress bar now is creating the initial previews. Again, you don't need to worry about that, but it's going to take a little bit of time while Lightroom basically reads every single one of these files and then generates a preview, an image preview from the data that's in the files. So while it's doing that, let me close this off. I'm just going to dismiss this window. And let's go to the Finder, and I'm going to look at the hard drive right here. This is the external hard drive. And I'll go back to the column view, and you'll see my image library here. Now there's a folder in here. Lightroom did this automatically. It created a 2013 folder. And inside that folder is another folder that's based on the date when those images were taken. And here is the list. These are the images that were imported from the card. The card is down here, Nikon D800. Here are the images here. And now it's copied them off of the card and put them in the image library. Now every time I come back with a new card with new images, it will continue to add new folders here with different dates on them, and that's how we're going to be importing more images through Lightroom into the image library. I'll dismiss this Finder window, go back to Lightroom, open it up, and you can see now that it's completed. This progress bar has gone away. It's now completed doing all the previews, and everything is fine. Let me close Lightroom. I'll quit Lightroom right here. And I'll go back and open it back up again, because I just want to show you that now when Lightroom opens again, we don't get the initial dialog that we saw the first time. It opens directly to the last catalog. In this case, this is the one I just created, and it has all the previews of the images in it. So basically that's it. That's how you're going to import images from your card or your camera. I would recommend against using the camera with the cable for two reasons. Number one, it's really, really slow. The data coming off of your camera through a cable is going to be really, really, really slow. And then the other thing is that there's a risk if your battery is low on your camera that your camera obviously has to be turned on to do that kind of transfer from the camera to the computer. And the risk is that if the battery should die, if you should run out of power, it's going to corrupt either the files, it may corrupt the card, that kind of thing. So my recommendation to you is when you're importing files you want to get them onto your computer from a card, is to either have an external card reader, or depending upon your computer, you may have a card reader built in. My monitor, for example, that I use has a card reader built into it. So I take the card out of the camera, I put it into the monitor, and then I don't have to worry about any power issues. The last thing I'll talk to you about is in the import dialog. I'll just click on that again. There is a little box up here that says eject after import. Turning that on will mean that once the files have transferred, it will basically it will what's called dismount the card. In other words, it'll close the card and it will take it off of your desktop. And I usually leave this checked on like that, so that once the thing is completed, I can just pull out the card and not risk any kind of corruption. I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't want to do any more importing. All my images are already here. So I'm in the library, and once I'm in the library here, I can change the thumbnail size if I want to change the size of the images. And we'll talk some more in other tutorials about the library module, what we can do here. And so that's importing images from your camera.